to ask everyone to stand and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I'd ask for approval of tonight's agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Me.
Okay.
Gaffney,
Present.
Borstein,
Yes.
Meggs, Scylla, Kelly.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we had a motion to approve the agenda from Mike Ornstein and a second by Mary Scylla. Can all in favor? Aye. All opposed? So the motion carries. Now is open time for the public to raise items not on the agenda or for future agenda items. Members of the public may address the board on issues that are within our district's jurisdiction, but we can hold no substantial discussion at this time. Does anybody like to address the board? Seeing none, I'm going to go to the standing committees report out. The HR committee, Michael, you stood in for Mary. Do you want to do that? Or?
No, I'm still
No,
in for
okay.
Mary. I'm happy to do that.
All right, Tom?
No, we're good.
Michael's normally on it.
Michael's going to do it.
That's why he said he
So-
would stand.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
We looked at the amazing work that was started by RGS, continued by Felicia and the HR department at RVSD. And it's a very lovely body of work, which we will go over later. There were a couple of very small items at the beginning. And other than that, we really liked what had been done. And, you know, and the nice thing about it is it was not written in a vacuum, and that I understand that our representative employees along the way have had a great deal amount of input and watched along the way as we were developing this new policy manual. So the last one that was developed was in 2001, I believe. So this was 16 years ago, and this is a very amazing piece of work. And it's a living document, and will continue to be developed into the future. So our thoughts were that we should approve it, but we'll discuss that on item 9. And also, we went through human resources costs for the last quarter, and they just fiscal year 17 and 18, which we finished up just a few days ago. The HR cost for the whole year was approximately 50% of the amount that we had budgeted. So I remember 4 years ago when I started with RGS, and we mentioned Felicia here, there were worries about that we were constantly going to be going up in human resources costs, and in fact we've been going down every year. And I think we've got a really top-notch program going. That would be it.
Okay. Thank you. Tom, do you want to do the Finance Committee?
Yeah, I'll do the Finance Committee. Doug and I attended the Finance Committee, and the most important thing we do is review the interim financial statements, and we looked over those in detail, and everything looked fine. We had a couple of questions about where are bond proceeds being kept, so we can lose some interest on that, and we can discuss those if necessary. We also reviewed or looked at the you could say accept the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, and our financial reporting gets a Certificate of Achievement for the work done there.
Right.
And Julie and Felicia
Yep.
are responsible for that. We appreciate that very much. We also took a look at the very long policy work Michael was talking about. The only thing I can add to it, it's quite lengthy. It's done by, it's actually a collection of policies. So to amend it, we just would look at one policy at a time and can amend it that way. So it's organized very well. We reviewed the capital program. We've got a lot of work outstanding, as everybody knows. And we also took a look at the monthly legal services, and that's information item C. And the net summary is that from fiscal year 15-16 to last year, fiscal year 17-18, our legal costs have dropped over $160,000 in just about every category. So that was something that we were working on when I first got on the board. We wanted to reduce these costs. And some good progress has been made. We're well below our budget
Yeah.
for the year.
Well, we also mentioned, so it went, in fiscal year 14-15, it was $409,000, including $117,000 in litigation. Now, this year, it's $244,000, and one of the things I mentioned when we were discussing that is, with the number of contracts we have, and you just went over how much, $44 million in the ground right now in projects, you know, one little mistake on a contract would make us lose that money in a heartbeat. So, you know, we have good legal counsel, and, you know, we do want to keep that down, and we do want to keep an eye on that.
So our legal costs are now going for review of contracts and construction.
That's right.
Contracts, yeah.
As opposed to,
To protect us. As opposed to-
exactly right. Okay, thank you very much. Central Marin Sanitation Agency.
Okay, I'll do Central Marin. Michael and I attended Central Marin Sanitation last Tuesday, a week ago Tuesday. And first of all, they elected board new officers, and Michael was elected vice chair for next fiscal year. And Michael and I were on the finance committee for CMSA. There's only 30 of us in our district.
And that means Michael's in line to be chair the following year? Is that the way it works, or?
Pardon me?
Is Michael in line to be chair the following year?
If I was on, we rotate every 2 years though. So,
Okay.
yeah, because I was vice chair this year, but I'm opting, you know, what do you call it, out my term expires.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why others are always the chair and not us, because we keep rotating
Maybe
out.
we need to think about our strategy on that
We
point then.
may. We may need to think about that. Something of interest too, we had a pavement project, and it came in 120% over budget. And we're facing these projects that come in over budget. So we rejected all bids on the pavement project, and we're just going to do a piecemeal. Because it was way over. And then the other thing, bullets were found at the treatment plant from the rifle range.
Oh, again.
Oh.
And so somebody's got to lobby. That's the only way you do it, because there's a mountain in between, so somebody's probably.
Well, that happened once before. There was somebody that shot a bullet that hit right near a restaurant behind Kerner. And so, but that was before the building was enclosed and they were shooting outside.
They still have an outdoor range.
They have an outdoor range.
Oh, they do, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And they complained to the manager of the range, and he took it very seriously.
Yeah.
Looked into it. Yeah.
What goes up is coming down.
Yeah.
And we might also want to note just on that paving thing, the reason is because frankly speaking, the amount of paving that's happening in the North Bay is huge, with massive contracts out there. And why any of these companies would want to pay attention to, in that respect, what is a little itty bitty paving project, they just don't want to deal with it, they want to pay attention to the big ones. And then Gelati Brothers was the one that actually made the bid, and they just said, you know, basically, you know, here, we'll make it very high, and if we get it, great. If we don't, we really don't care, because there's tons of other stuff. And so they rejected all the bids, and hopefully, in the winter time, when things start to calm down a little bit, there will be more companies who will bid on it.
That's a good, I'm glad you guys did that. We've done that here too.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem reasonable. You know, you don't have to do everything at once.
Well, and it's competing with the road work that
Yeah.
we in MMWD are doing during the summer months when schools are out,
Yeah.
so presumably CMSA.
He said there were a number of bids on the same day, it just turned out, a number of real good jobs as well, so the very same day.
Do you know, is the shooting range, I feel like I think it's associated with the prison and the
Yeah,
CDCR.
sure, I think
because the
it's
prison
it's
will
close,
do-
it's not a public shooting range.
Yeah, They brought,
Yeah, oh, it's
Yeah, yeah,
definitely police and
oh, it's-
sheriff. Oh, absolutely.
they brought the slug over to San Quentin, and the warden looked at it and said, yep, that's one of
Our
ours.
shooting range manager.
Right,
said,
okay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a ricochet,
Oh, no.
because
No, it
then
was-
then
it
the
was in a
bullet
good
would have
shape.
been destroyed.
All right.
So they're working on it.
Okay, thank you very much. North Bay Watershed, Pam?
Yes, I attended on July 15th. It was a presentation by Michael Patrick George. He is called the Delta Water Master. He was appointed in 2015. And he is an independent officer of the state, reporting jointly to the State Water Resources Control Board and the Delta Stewardship Council. And his job is to administer water rights within the Sacramento, St. Joaquin River Delta and the Susu Marsh, and also advises the board and the council on related water rights, water quality, and water operations in and affecting the Delta. So, the takeaway for me, first of all, I talked about how many gallons and gallons of water it takes to make a hamburger, which I thought was kind of interesting when he's looking at water overall, an overall picture. But the role of the Delta Water Master is mostly around water rights, water allocation, managing the drought and flood, plus climate change, I'm sure, will be also an impact. This role was created in 2009. He also talked about the history of California going back to 1850 when the Spanish settled and kind of how they dealt with water rights. It was sort of first in time and first in rights was the motto. So that was pretty interesting. And then the challenges obviously is infrastructure, also ecological. As temperature rises, they're going to lose the smelt. The delta smelt will die, and that is a big food source for a lot of critters in that area. And then the saltwater intrusion also, with, the salt will increase, and it was actually, as someone said, that CMSA is actually starting to see that in some of their numbers, that the salt is starting to increase. So that was, and there's no meeting in August, and the next one's in September, and it will be Bruce Wolf. Let me see. All on board.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to move on to number...
I have an update on LAFCO.
Oh, okay.
I only go to the meetings if it pertains to us to save the district money, but recently I got a letter from Jason Freed. He's the interim executive officer because Rachel's gone and they had to have somebody. So they are going to pursue consolidation. They're going to have a meeting on August, I think, 9th. And in the grand jury report, if you remember about the San Quentin Village and Murray Park to annex or consolidate on that. Anyway, they're going to start moving ahead. I don't know exactly what that means, but I did get this letter and I just wanted to let you all know.
Andrea, Felicia, what can you tell us about that?
I also was contacted by the executive director, he's the interim executive director for LAFCO. Marin.
A lot of that going around.
Yeah. So we enjoyed meeting one another over the phone.
Okay.
He said that he had spoken briefly to Pam and had let her know that there would be an agenda item on the August 9th meeting at LAFCO, and he wasn't quite sure exactly what the presentation was going to consist of just yet, but that they would in fact have a conversation about Ross Valley Sanitary District, and then specifically annexing Park and San Quentin Village, very consistent with the response that Ross Valley Sanitary District Board had.
And what was the county's response? The cranberry.
I don't believe we
County's response was right
received the county's response yet to
They got it?
the grand jury's report. He said that he was still compiling all of that information, and he was going to get back to me with some additional information.
Will you let us know by an email when you get information of their response? I mean, it'll be public, won't it?
Was the county asked to respond?
I'm sorry?
Was the county asked to respond like we were?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I don't see how that comes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to do that the same. Okay. All right. Number 6 is conduct public hearing in consideration of adopting resolution number 18-1546, approving the report of the sewer services charges for fiscal year 2018-19 and directing the filing of charges for collection by the county tax collector. Now, just to remind everyone, in 2014, the Ross Valley Sanitary District Board set out a 5-year rate plan, and so nothing has changed in that rate plan of 2014. This is simply the last year of it. Is it 5 years or 4 years? 4 years. 5 years, okay. So this is the last year of that, so the board could lower it, it can't raise it, because these were previously announced.
We're not approving the service charges.
Yeah, I know.
They've already been approved.
We did that last, yeah.
No, and we did it about a month ago.
That's
Two
okay.
months ago. No, all we're doing tonight
Is it-
is authorizing the collection
Right.
on the tax rate.
Sure.
So we can't change.
No, I was making the point that we can't change it up ever after you do the initial 5-year plan. You can't raise it 2 years later. You could lower it 2 years later, but what I was going to say is we elected not to do that, but to continue with the rate plan as was originally planned.
Yes.
So tonight, we're simply approving the procedure.
Tonight, we're approving collecting the charge with property taxes, which is by far the least expensive way to send out bills.
Absolutely right. Is there any questions anybody has? Is there any public comment on this issue? Bring it back for motion.
Can you, as a formality, because it does require a public hearing, it would be good to open a public hearing, see if there are any comments, close the public hearing, just the statute requires a public hearing.
Fine. Okay, so I will do so, and at this point, I would open the public hearing and open comments from the public. Still seeing none, I'm now going to close. Here, I gave you 2 chances, folks. Close the public hearing.
I move that we
Wait,
adopt.
hold on.
I got a comment.
Okay.
I reviewed the report, as a member of the finance committee, and there are some 298 pages. And there's about 23,000 equivalent dwelling units that we build. And of course, the vast majority of them are within our Ross Valley service area, about 3,000 in Larkspur and 93 in Murray Park.
Mhm.
We always wonder how many are in Murray Park. But anyway, in my review, the report was consistent.
Yeah, I'll take this opportunity, since you mentioned that, to say again, when we come up for our next rate review in the fall, the ad valorem that the ratepayers are paying in most of the district seems to exceed the additional funds coming from the Larkspur residents. Single family in Ross Valley Zone 909, single family in Larkspur 1178, but even with the higher number, I don't think that's exactly equitable, but we'll address that in the fall. With that having been said, any other comments, questions, motions?
Move that we adopt resolution number 18-1546, approving the report of sewer service charges for fiscal year 18 and 19, and direct the filing of charges for collection by the county tax collector.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, thank you. Number 7 is the consent calendar. Matters listed on this item are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion unless anyone from the public or anyone on this board wishes to pull something. The consent calendar may include resolutions, therefore the motion, second, and vote will also be applicable to the other resolutions and recorded accordingly. There won't be any separate discussion of these items unless requested by a member of the board or the public prior to the time the board votes on the motion to adopt. Would anyone in the public wish us to pull any of the consent items? Does anyone in the public have any comment on any of the consent items? Having said that, I will briefly pull G, but we can...
I'm gonna pull F.
Good.
F.
Okay, you would like to pull F.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's talk about F first. Pam?
Okay. So I guess it's kind of just a couple of basic questions. I looked at all there's 9 items that came up on this project in the bottom. And is that what you're asking the $155,000 for?
The 155,000, yes, is for engineering and design services related to the project which has been budgeted for fiscal year 1920 Force Main gravity and the gravity sewer rather, and this is the
Valves.
budgeted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the valves.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, the budgeted amount of $500,000 for the first phase of this project. So this is a $155,000 master services agreement toward a $500,000 engineering and design services for a $2.9 million gravity sewer service capital project.
And when will this be done? It says 1920.
So
Go ahead.
the first phase of the design would be this year and on an accelerated schedule because we currently have one valve, well, two valves, one air release and one isolation valve which aren't functioning. So one of the first steps is to make recommendations for temporary repair or permanent repair of those to get those operating again.
One is permanently opened and one was permanently closed, right?
The air valve is removed, so it's not releasing air right now. And the isolation valve is open, which means our system is functioning normally, but
Should there be an emergency, you can't close it?
emergency, we can't.
And I bet there were 3.
So those elements are in here, and then, so some of the budget this year could be used for construction of those. And then the final design, yes, all the bigger project would follow in 1920 for construction in summer 2020.
And one of those valves, there's still a question as to whether you make it the standard size or enlarge it, if I recall.
And the air releases, yes. We found on all of our past projects that our air releases are undersized. So the Schaffen Miller's here, technically they did design on the first one. So we'll have them model this new force main and just to evaluate whether or not that force main is also undersized.
Okay.
Is this the same? Well, Alan, you go.
Then you have, I see on number 6, the word tech-eye, right? So I start to get sort of nervous. I was here with the big blowout. Would we want to do that first, this main, or what's your plan? And you're not going to do it in the middle of the rainy season, right?
This is a line that goes right through the middle of Bonner Center. It's a bypass line, so it's only opened in an emergency to connect the flow from Kentfield and Greenbrae and go back and forth. So what the first step we're going to do is assess, can we get rid of it? Can we use other infrastructure, or can we build new pipeline across the back of Bonner Center that would serve the same function? Then we can abandon that pipe. We think rehabilitation of it, and like you said, it would be challenging. But it's not an active line that has flow in it or would expect to have flow in it.
I think to abandon it, it's going to be a big deal too. Lots more money.
We need to get into it, from both sides.
Yeah.
It's not, but, so we'll get an evaluation in this and an assessment on, can we use some existing other infrastructure, or is there a better alternative than using this 36-inch line?
Thank you. Okay, it's all yours, Tom.
This is like the valves we put along the bike path.
The ARVs, yeah.
Some of them, yes.
Yeah. So if we do boxes or whatever you call them, please make them
Pretty.
pretty. The other ones we got a lot.
Yeah.
We'll learn flack about because they don't look good enough. Yeah, they're working on it.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, I think they're faster.
They should be smaller. The challenge would be the one out in Piper Park in Lewisburg, which is quite shallow. And we'd have to work that one, a permanent fix there, if it needs to be raised, would need to work with their regulatory agencies, because we'd probably need to raise the path in order to make that work.
All right, do we have anything else on E? All right, let's go to F. All right, so this is the letter that we,
Go to G.
I'm sorry, this is the letter that we talked about to the city of Lawrenceburg. I would say I did speak to Dan briefly, and that conversation went very well. He asked me to send a letter to Dan Schultz, the town manager, which I did. And I copied Felicia, and did I copy you as well on that area? I'm afraid I didn't, okay. And so, again, the conversation went fine. I don't know how, where we're gonna go from here, what we're gonna do, but do you want to say something about this?
Yeah. I want to change this letter completely. I don't want to write this letter. I want to say, dear Mayor Dan Hillman, congratulations on your appointment as Larkspur's representative on the CMS.
No.
And then just say, this letter, however, this letter is intended to remind the city that in the future, here's the procedure to do it. I don't think we need a joint.
I think we talked, well, no, first off, let's go back, I think we do need a joint meeting, and I think we talked about that in the same meeting, and let me tell you several reasons why. Our attorney,
For what? Several reasons.
why we should move forward with this. Our attorney has advised us that should we abandon our agreement, we're going to abandon that agreement. And I don't see any reason why this board should abandon the agreement with Larkspur, that when the seat becomes vacant, we follow the procedure of appointing 2 commissioners from this board, 2 commissioners from the Larkspur board, and then we put that job out to the public so that the public has a right to apply for that, just like the public has a right to apply for the planning commission in towns and any other positions. That's the agreement we did. Now, that was followed with Kathleen Hartzell's position. It has not been followed here, but that's okay because we're not moving forward. I want to stop here for a second and say, Tom, if after the public is given the opportunity to apply, and whether they have 100 or 2 or none, I'm saying that we could put together a 2-person subcommittee of the Ross Valley Sanitary District Board, and if that 2-person subcommittee said, we want Dan Hilmer, I'm fine with that. But we have a procedure. And the second thing is, and we talked about this ad nauseum, Michael was not able, he was ill that time, but at the last meeting, this board almost didn't pass the JPA. Mary was concerned about it, Pam voted against it, and I wanted to move forward with it, but under the understanding that we're not hiding under the desk anymore. That's over. And we're going to have a joint meeting, we're going to talk about the seat, and we're going to address it.
Okay. First, I have a question for legal counsel. If we write in here, congratulations on your appointment, and however, we reserve the right to use the 1993 agreement in the future. This time, can't we protect our rights that way?
Yeah, I think it could be drafted in a way that, we acknowledge that you've apparently been appointed, although it wasn't through the normal process, and we'll respect it this time, but we feel strongly that the normal process should be used in the future if that's the direction you want to go.
I'm sorry, may I make a point of
Yeah.
information? I would like to say that I'm fairly certain that Dan Hilmer has not actually been appointed to the seat.
It's not.
He is an alternate, which very similar to the RVSD board's appointments. You have an appointment and then you have an alternate. And I guess the appointment of Kathy Hartzell was made according to the agreement. And according to, sort of typical town and city and board protocols, there was an alternate for that appointment who is in fact Dan Hilmer. So he is acting as an alternate currently to Kathy Hartzell, who I understand is no longer on the council. And that's all the information that I have.
And
Right.
In my, just a point of information,
Sorry, sorry.
in my conversation with Dan, I indicated that, it could very well be that the 2 members of the Ross Valley Sanitary Board asked his name be put forward. But I don't, I couldn't make that
Did he
commitment.
say
I don't
he's
know.
not, and you talked to him, did
Yeah.
he say he's still the alternate?
Well,
Because
that
I
did
thought
not
it
come up in
wasn't,
our
I thought it
conversation.
was CMS meeting.
Well, it hasn't come before the Larkspur Town Council. And Greg and I think I must have been president of the board at the time, specifically had a conversation where he said, or should we go to Dan Schultz and get a new appointee? And I said, well, the JPA is being revised, and I actually think it would be optimal if we were able to negotiate for the elimination of the seat. So let's not
We all
go
agree
through
with that.
So I said, and maybe this wasn't as the president of the board, maybe this was just seeking my advice. I said, let's not go through a formal process of getting somebody put in there while the JPA is being revised, because maybe there won't be any need to.
And the letter,
And so
the letter addresses that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the letter addresses that.
So I think Dan's just filling the chair, and I think Dan knows that. Now, he may say, I want to do it permanently, but that hasn't been done yet. So I think it's a fair point that the process hasn't
Okay,
been
but
followed.
I thought it had been.
Okay. And the other thing about the process being followed is people in towns have the right to apply to be on the planning commission. They may not get it, but they have a right to apply. The citizens of Larkspur have a right to apply for this position.
Well, that's Larkspur's job.
No, it's not.
Sure it is.
No, it's not.
It is.
It's in our agreement.
We have a
No,
process.
the process is that they are required to publicize the event. It's in our agreement. You want me to refer that? It's in the agreement.
No, you don't have to. I've read the agreement plenty of times. Okay, if he's not already appointed, which I thought he was, then I'm okay.
All right. Okay.
My only comment would be that we are choosing new
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I know that you had kind of led the charge on this, but that was what I noticed about it.
That's right. This may not be a valid
Said
title
teacher
in
line,
20 minutes.
yes. We're going to select,
Oh,
we're going to select new officers tonight, that's what I noticed.
With that in mind, is there any other comment on the letter?
No,
Okay.
no, I think, I may have misheard you, I thought you said there were 2 commissioners from Larkspur, you didn't,
There's one.
there's only one right now.
Right, no, I'm sorry, 2 commissioners from Larkspur City Council to the subcommittee, and 2 board members
Oh, I see,
on this,
The-
for the 4-member board to
Right,
appoint
the process.
That's what they did before, and actually they did do this process, because I was part of
That's
it. And
And
Peter
then you integrated
Sullivan was the person who tried to get the Larkspur seat, and he was shot down, so.
Who was that again?
Peter Sullivan.
Peter Sullivan, so it has happened
Right.
once,
Yeah. Okay.
that I know of.
So do we have any words missing on this?
I think it's fine.
I think it's fine, but I would also say that if somebody else is signing the letter and they want to wordsmith it, I mean, I know.
Well, let's
No.
wordsmith it now, if that's the case.
Oh, I would defer, but, because I assume, did you draft this?
I did.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say, like, if,
We
for
could
example,
just
one
say-
time there was a grand
we
jury
could just say
response letter
the
that
Ross
didn't
Valley
sound like my
Sanitary
voice.
requested the meeting.
Sure.
And lose as president. The Ross Valley Sanitary District requests a joint meeting in accordance with the, whatever.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
I move the consent calendar.
Second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. All right.
Well, that's
I'm
just-
sorry, I apologize. That's for the entire consent calendar, so I'm going to do that again. I apologize for that. I was thinking about E. Can I have a motion to approve the entire consent agenda? And is there any public comment on any of that before?
I have one question.
All right.
When we pull items, don't we have to ask the public?
I was asking the public when you...
Okay. Okay.
Does the
I was
public
just-
have any comments on any of the consent items? And I did that as well before we pulled them. Okay, with that, can I have a motion to approve the entire
I already
consent?
moved the whole consent calendar.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Andrea can
Okay.
direct me just with a little movement of her eyebrow.
Okay, number 8 is consideration of tentative approval for public sewer extension, PSX, permit for number 402 for the Victory Village project at 2626 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard in Fairfax, and discussion and direction regarding a request for a reduction in the sewer connection fees for the affordable housing project. Can I have the staff report?
Yes, thank you, Board President. This project before you actually has 2 parts. There's the tentative approval process and the final approval process. And the tentative approval process is tonight's item, which actually also has 2 parts. And that part is to consider the application. This is a 54 unit affordable housing development in Fairfax. And it involves a public sewer extension of approximately 600 feet, a new 8-inch diameter sewer line, and an additional 60 feet extending across Sir Francis Drake, as an additional extension of that new sewer line. That's the first part of the application process, and then tonight. And then the second is a consideration to reduce the connection fees for this new development project. The board has the authority under Ordinance 90 to consider a reduction or, in fact, a complete waiver of these connection fees. The applicant, who is here this evening and available to answer questions, is requesting an 80% reduction in connection fees. Staff has estimated the connection fees at approximately $600,000. An 80% reduction would result in connection fee of approximately $120,000. And the applicant has mentioned that there is precedent for the board to consider a reduction of fees for specifically affordable units, and in the past the board's reduced fees up to 80%. So tonight again, there's one action, which is to accept the tentative approval, and then also to please discuss and direct staff on consideration of reduction in fees.
Questions?
I have a question.
I'd like to make it 2 items. You know, first we approve the tentative, well, we discuss approving the tentative
I agree.
permit,
That's
and
good.
then we discuss
Yeah, I agree.
the connection.
Two different things.
Okay. Any other questions before we, okay.
I have questions. Okay. Did you want to go first?
No.
Okay. So will this need to include a new pump system? No.
No.
Okay. So maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought this project was a bit shaky moving ahead. There's been some issues around the open space in the back now, and there's some problems with funding.
I'm not aware of those specific issues
The
that
applicants
you
are
may
here.
be, but the applicant is available to answer
Okay.
questions.
Okay. The other thing I have is how many units are very low?
All 54, except one, which is the property management unit.
I mean extremely low.
Oh, I will have to defer that question
Because
to the applicant as
affordable low
well.
in Marin is
Yeah.
not really affordable.
They're different.
Yeah,
It's different.
I was a planning commissioner there for a long time, so I kind of noticed. So I noticed I could not find that unless it was in the plans, maybe in the plans.
For the purposes of the Ross Valley process of the approval, we only are looking at it in terms of affordable or low income or senior housing. Allows us to offer reduction in connection fees. As you mentioned, it's the town of Fairfax who is looking at more specifically low or very low housing categories.
Yeah, I understand that, but never mind.
No, we'll ask.
Well, I just feel a little uncomfortable giving such a low, I mean, I want to know what they're talking about when they say affordable. It
Understood.
could be $2,000 a month, and that's considered, could be affordable.
Pen? How do we answer? They're right here.
I want to ask my questions to staff, I will move to the applicant. I'm just throwing out this stuff first to see if I can find it out. And then there's an easement.
Yes, we require, so part of the process is they build the public sewer extension and then we maintain it. It becomes our infrastructure. And so we require the easement to go over the private property so that we can access and maintain that infrastructure improvement.
Okay, and this is for 40 years. The development.
For 40 years.
It's forever.
It says here, this is something to do with Marin Housing Authority rentals for at least 40 years. So that, in other words, the rent,
The deed restriction on the low-income housing is a 40-year term. That's a good question for the applicant.
okay. So,
Funds will belong to a term of 55 years, so they better be sticking around for the other 15 years to pay the loan back.
well, that's what I saw the 55 years, but then I saw the 40 years and I'm really confused. So anyway, those are my questions, but
Okay,
the
so
applicant.
I'm going to ask the applicant to address those, but before I do that, I do have a question. How much time and work and money will the Ross Valley Sanitary District personnel be putting into this?
I'm going to defer that question to our engineering staff.
Good evening.
If you
I would
introduce yourself
estimate
for the
staff,
if you introduce
This
yourself
is
for-
Jim Smith, the engineer.
I estimate we probably have about 6 person-hours of effort into the project so far, working with the applicant, reviewing the plans on a preliminary basis. The remainder of the work to process the public sewer extension maybe in the several tens of hours. We do have an adopted fee for the processing of a public sewer extension. I believe the amount is approximately $7,000, which is intended to recover our costs to process. Once it's built, it will accept it into our system along with the property rights necessary to allow us access to operate, maintain, eventually replace, upgrade, etc., that piping system. And through our rate system, we will be collecting annual service charges from the customers served by that system, which would be the vehicle that to reimburse us or cover our costs for operating and maintaining that system going forward.
How many ADUs? Or is it, how are we going to do 54? Be an ADU per, okay.
There are 50.
There's not going to be anything that's like multiple down one large lateral or something like that. They're all individual.
No. There's 54 dwelling units, one of which is a manager's unit, and then 53 available for rent for low-income seniors. They also have certain common area facilities. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's kind of a manager's office on site. There's a very casual common kitchen area, not with a lot of cooking facilities, but some common facilities. I believe they're going to have a laundry facility for the community laundry with about 6 machines to be served there, and a couple of other minor areas. And as of now, their plans are preliminary, but I believe they have 3 different connections to the sewer to serve that development. In addition, they're proposing to subdivide the land. The main portion of the land that's buildable is 2 acres on the valley floor. That'll include this development that we just spoke about. In addition, they hope to subdivide to create 2 other larger parcels, which would be kind of an estate residential parcel. And I believe that they would like to sell those to help fund the entire.
Is that the
project.
open space part?
Yeah, the valley.
Because they lost that in the deal. That was part of the deal. And it was lost. I can't remember. I had a lot of emails about this from the open space committee. And so that now is going to be developed, is that the plan?
Yeah.
Because that will be more sewer.
Can you introduce yourselves? Is Daniel and Jake, or is that who's?
So I'm Jake Rosen, an Associate Project Manager at Resources for Community Development, the sponsor and developer of the property. This is David Schnur, our Project Manager Consultant, and then we've got Michelle Alberta from our civil engineer from Providence. So to respond to the open space question, we are subdividing right now a 20-acre parcel to 3 parcels. That's correct. The 2-acre development site is where Victory Village will be located. And then we'll have 2 9-acre parcels. If you're familiar with the site, you'll know that it's mostly kind of steep, wooded hillside, but there is space behind our development site for 2 single-family homes. That's what it's zoned for right now, Fairfax. We have anticipated the sewage capacity needs for those 2 single-family homes into this public sewer extension application, on top of what we'll need for our 54-unit affordable housing complex. If you don't mind, I can go ahead and respond to your other questions that you spoke earlier. So we have all of our financing is committed at this point. We're awarded extremely competitive 9% low-income housing tax credits through the state just a month ago. So that's kind of giving us a go-ahead to move forward. So we'll start construction in December. And that was not without great assistance from the county and the Marin Community Foundation to help kind of fund the last gap that we had. With regards to the term of the affordability, the 40-year term is for the project-based vouchers through Marin Housing Authority. Those project-based vouchers, we have 53 of them, so for every affordable unit, that allows no household to pay more than 30% of their income on rent. So if they're on a fixed income, SSI, these are all these seniors, no matter how much they make, they pay 30% of the rent, and MHA covers the rest. So we are expecting those vouchers for at least 40 years.
So that's not set,
That is set in
It's hoped
stone.
for.
No, that is a commitment. that we have.
It is a commitment.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the rest of our financing is committed for 55 years, including the tax credits as well as county home and county CUG funds.
So what happens after 40 years?
So after 40 years, we apply for vouchers again, and we probably, so RCD is a nonprofit affordable housing developer. Providing and preserving affordable housing is our mission. So yes, we have finance commitments for 40 years, 55 years, but, this is what we are. We are 501c3 incorporated to preserve affordable housing, so it's highly unlikely that we'll still have 55 at year 55. So for all intents and purposes, this will be affordable in perpetuity. With regards to the rents and the unit affordability targeting, let's see, 50%. So 38 of units will be what's called very low income. And then, I guess, just 40%.
38 of 30%?
Yes.
So 38 of the units are extremely low income, which says that they can't be occupied by anyone who earns more than 30% of the median income. Because these are restricted to be seniors, in reality, the residents are likely to be on fixed income. But 38 of the 53 units will be for people who are extremely low income, and the remainder of the units will be for people who are very low income, either at 40 or 50% of the median income. Now, as Jake said, because we have Section 8 project-based vouchers, those numbers I gave are sort of the maximum, so we cannot rent to someone who earns more than that amount, but because of the rent subsidy from Section 8, the likelihood is that we'll in fact have people who are earning less than that, and the Section 8 voucher will make up the difference.
And there was some politics around that people applying for these are from all over the Bay Area. It's not just Marin or Fairfax, is that correct?
That's
You
correct.
can't legally restrict people because it would be a,
It's a fair housing. It's a
Right.
fair housing
It
issue.
would,
So, yeah, so it's, I also wanted to mention that 11 of the units will be reserved for chronically
yes, no,
homeless
that's what I was looking for,
households.
the word.
Um,
Disparate impact
Yeah,
is the phrase I was looking for. It would have a disparate impact on minorities who don't live in Fairfax and San Anselmo. We have a very low African-American residential rate and not a very high Hispanic residential rate. So if it was held strictly for local residents, that would violate the Housing and Urban Development's disparate impact regulation.
that's right, yeah.
Okay.
But I also want to mention that 11 of the units will be reserved for chronically homeless households coming off of the county's coordinated entry system.
The whole person, it's called the whole person. One person can't be, yeah. That'll be interesting. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicants? Any public comment from the applicants or from anyone else? Okay, I'll take it back to the board. Tom, you want to say something?
I wanted to make a motion.
Would you?
I move tentative approval of public service.
I'm sorry, you wanted to split this, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion for tentative approval for public sewer extension permit number 4 to the Victory Village project, 2626 Seventh Street.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, and then would you like to make a second motion?
Gotcha.
That you're,
Well, I want to discuss the 80% reduction. We're in the midst of a major capital improvement program, and I believe that an 80% reduction is way beyond what's reasonable. And I would support, and in fact, I think we should have it in our ordinance, that a reduction no more than 50%. And I'll move a 50% reduction unless there's, you want to discuss it further.
Can you say why?
Reason,
Why?
why, what?
Why you wanted to lower it? Did you just feel 80% is too much?
I feel 80%
To
is
cover our
way too much.
costs? Sorry?
I feel it's too large a reduction. I think we're asking our users now to pay major capital project costs. We're in the midst of a major capital improvement program, which they weren't in 2008. They should have been, but they weren't. And I think, we're gonna go through a rate hearing, in probably early next year. I'm gonna be asking for more money. And I feel it's inappropriate to do it.
Let me touch on that. One of the reasons I asked what our costs were, it seems like our costs would be covered by the fee, even at the 80% reduction.
But this is buying into our capital infrastructure. The purpose of the connection fee is to.
Well, then how can you charge anybody else a full connection fee? You see?
No, I understand, because this is a specific type of a project that is not like so many others.
It's a project that's using wastewater capacity.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. I'm willing to grant a 50% reduction. I think 80% is excessive.
It's almost giving, I mean, I don't want to say this because, I really try and think about the poor and the nurse, and I know the Bennett House well, and I know a lot of those clients in there, and I think this is going to be similar to the Bennett House. But 80%. Plus, wouldn't they be able to apply for the low-income, lower rate if they're Section 8, so they would get that?
Right, the occupants are gonna have a reduced sewer service charge by us. But I guess my question would be, does this, will the Marin Community Foundation fill this gap? If we, is this already in a budget somewhere and going to become burdensome? And then do we have any more data internally? So the information on the previous 80% reductions is just anecdotal and provided by the applicant. Do we know from our records what kind of, is that?
We have resolutions of the findings made by the board, but they were simply that they were affordable housing developments. And
When, I don't
in
remember.
2009.
That's the year I got elected, so I don't remember.
So it was some time ago.
60%, Trump.
Well,
About 60%, 60%.
well, and also I'm thinking that, so we raised our connection fees dramatically as we began all of our capital work. So while it is the same percentage, they're going to be paying more. I'm sure 80% of whatever the connection fees were in 2009 was not very much money. Do you remember that? So our connection fees were like
I do. I wasn't
very
here
low.
when they got raised. I don't know how much they got raised.
They
got
were, oh my God, it's like
Yeah, they were way out of
thousands
date.
dollars.
They were way out of date, and Frank,
20
to
years.
his credit, pushed us and pushed us. We were talking about waiting for the rate study,
Right.
but they were so far out of date and out of alignment with the connection fees charged by other entities that we realized we were really, leaving them on the table. And we also did it in advance of this housing development right over here, the Rose Garden, so that we, recouped that. So all of that, I don't know what I'm not making an argument. I'm just laying out the things that are floating through my mind. So 80% of what now is a pretty, is a bigger connection fee than the 80% when EAH and the other ones were being built, which I think cuts in the way of they're probably paying more than EAH or, the whatever did for theirs, even if we give them 80%. Just putting that on the table.
All of the housing costs.
Pardon me?
All housing
That
costs.
is true.
have gone up.
That is true.
Well, also, this isn't going to be forever. This is going to go to market value after so many years.
He just made the point that they're a nonprofit and they're not in the business of doing it.
Okay, but
I think that's the cynical way to look at it.
No, but I'm just trying to point out.
But right now, they are a nonprofit and they are doing this for
I
the
don't-
purpose of creating.
I don't know them, well, but I don't think, you build a low-income housing project like this where all 53 units are low-income housing, it's not gonna change in 40 years, there are gonna be people living there.
Right.
You'd have to somehow, maybe if there was, a volcanic eruption, but other than that, people would be living in those apartments.
The one point I would make is that we've also heard about 2 private homes, and I assume that you said those are going to feed into the same sewer system, and so those 2 private homes are going to be benefiting from this
Is that
discount.
true?
right.
Discounted.
I was gonna ask
No,
that.
not true? Okay.
I forgot to
Yeah,
ask.
sure, please.
I'd like to speak to that and also clarify something I said earlier. So the 2 additional home sites that they hope to make available in the marketplace would be a beneficiary of the public sewer extension.
But they have their own connection
But
fees.
not-
Each one of those would be
Okay,
connections.
okay, thank you for that.
Also, when you asked earlier about our costs and recovery, I spoke to our processing costs for the public sewer extension and then the annual charge. But the connection fee itself, I think it was said earlier, and I think it's worth repeating, and that reflects really two things: buying into the infrastructure all the way to the treatment plant.
Right, yep.
That big pipes, force mains, trunk lines, everything like that, buying into the investment that the community has made over the decades, and also allowing us to approve that through our capital improvement program. That's really the intent of the connection fee as a whole.
Mhm.
The other thing I'd like to remind is that the connection fee is about $11,600 per EDU. Our share of that is $5,076.
That goes to CMSA.
The rest of it is CMSA, and they do have an ordinance in place since 2006 that if you decide to make a reduction, they would make the same proportional reduction.
Well, that's part of the 11. If we approve a 20% come down to 11, we cut CMSA's.
Out.
And they happen to have a $48 million capital improvement program next 5 years.
But that's what the connection fee is buying.
It's the
buying
only
into the
control we
system.
have over CMSA's budget. These connections.
Just to spite them, we should make it 90%.
Dear.
Okay.
I feel like we don't have a principled way to make this decision. I mean, we have a request, and I mean, I guess, staff, is there any way, our connection fees are based on our real cost of buying into the system, correct?
That's right.
Under Prop 218, there has to be a nexus between our actual costs and the fee structure that we adopted in that 5-year program. We'll be starting another one, I believe, in the next fiscal year.
That's right.
Also conforming with current law to create that nexus.
How about this? We approve 50%. You folks can come back to us if you're in real desperate trouble, and we'll reconsider.
Well, I think they need to plan.
Well, we're going to go on, we can approve 50% now, and then we can plan.
Michael,
It's like
what are your thoughts?
300,000.
You've been quiet, I want to ask you that.
What's 50%? Is that like 300,000?
Take that and divide by
Pam,
two.
more or less, I don't understand.
It's about 300,000.
About 300,000.
The full is 595. Do you all want to speak to us about what you're hearing?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
if I could, thank you.
Uh-huh.
I appreciate that. I mean, I would like to place this in the context of how we finance the entire project and where the money comes from to build the housing to serve very low and extremely low income senior citizens. We have a significant amount of money from the county and also from foundations in the county, as well as tax credits that were allocated at the state level. Everyone has been hit by significant increases in construction costs, particularly since the North Bay fires. And so when we got our most recent cost estimates for construction of the project, we had to return to the town, return to the county, return to the foundations, and basically say, we're stuck here. We don't have enough money to build this project. Is there something that, can you make up the gap? Can you help us? Because otherwise this project isn't financially feasible. And we can't go ahead with construction unless we have a feasible project. So all of our funders will not let us close in our financing and start construction if our budget's out of line. And so we come to you with this request in the same spirit that we went to these other public agencies, asking that they do their part to make it possible to build the housing for the low-income seniors, otherwise the project wouldn't be feasible. I recognize, you obviously recognize far better than we do, but I recognize that the district has a major capital improvement program and that it's necessary to get funds from all of the users in the district. I think the purpose of the policy that provides the fee deferment or reduction for projects that serve low-income households is a recognition of the public purpose of doing that and recognizing that by doing that, you make it possible to serve low-income households within the district's boundaries.
Did you make a similar request to MMWD?
We did, so MMWD has just institutionalized a 50% reduction of their connection fee, impact fee, just by meeting some minimum requirements for serving low-income households.
So, you know,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was telling our manager, is that I think in our ordinance, we should have an amount.
Oh, I think you're right, this is,
You know, we understand your project, I mean, you know, we could be against something like that, but, you know, us debating this each time.
I agree, we should have this, let's
I
bring
think we
this back.
should do it like MNWD did it, but I wouldn't be 50%, we're contributing $300,000.
Michael? Michael?
You know, the money that you're talking about would have to be put into the construction project, which you're gonna finance over 50 years. And
55.
so that, even though it seems like a large amount, is a small amount amortized over 50 years. And we got pipes in the ground now that we need to pay for now. And we've got 23,000 other constituents across our district. And I know I can't say everybody wants the project, but I certainly am in favor. I think it's a great project. My only concern is just that the 80%, I don't know how you came up with 80% versus 50%.
If I can respond to that, we just looked at the board's precedent in previous projects. Because the board had previously approved an 80% fee reduction, we understood that to be, since there isn't a written policy that says what the level of fee reduction would be, we looked at the past practice of the board.
We clearly need to bring this
Case by
before the
case,
board again, and so let me get to the end of the meeting where we say for future agenda items.
Yes, yeah.
Anyone else? Oh,
I kind of feel the same way, that 80% is hard to, I think 50% is generous, really. I don't know. I mean, it'd be wonderful to do it all, but I'm thinking of the pipes and, I mean, the money still, we're still gonna have to pay for it regardless by the constituents.
Can I have a motion?
I'm sorry.
Before I do that, go ahead. I was going to ask
Point of
a public
information.
comment beyond.
Yes, and there's actually no action before the board on the fee reduction. It's only a discussion and direction. We will bring back a resolution for the board to adopt at a future
Well, we
meeting,
may-
along with the final approval of the permit.
When we approved the tentative,
You did approve the tentative application, but the connection fee is a separate item.
That's right.
So I would like to, I mean, so when I heard 50% MMWD, I'm like, okay, well, maybe we should match them, but I'd like also to know what other sanitary districts are doing in the region for low-income housing, and what other water districts are doing. I have no, we just, yeah, I would rather make a more informed decision. I don't just want to be broadly saying, well, we think that number sounds too high. And then that will inform of a revised resolution that is fact-based. Okay?
And the staff would be happy to bring that information back to you at the next.
I think it would be wise at the time, although my colleagues may disagree, that we address the issue at the same time as a policy for this board.
as a part of our connection fee resolution.
Correct.
Right.
I think we ought to have an amendment to our connection fee resolution.
That's ordinance 90.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you. We're trying to thread the needle between being Santa and Grinch.
Yep.
If you don't mind, I just wanted to mention that in order to complete the project, we've agreed to replace a section of pipe beyond what we had originally thought we would be including, because it's currently under capacity, it's 6 inches, which is, as I understand, below the sanitary district's 8-inch requirement. So we're already agreeing to do some capital improvements just off of our site.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Important piece of information.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your efforts and what you do and your time today. With you, Jake, Daniel, and Michelle.
I'm glad you're
Dave.
really
Dave.
doing it.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Discussion, number 9 is discussion and provide direction on draft administration and personnel policy vote. This was one, I think it's 12, Finance and Human Resources, and so may I have a staff report?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. So this item is also a discussion and direction request from the board. We are not requesting adoption of the policy book this evening, but this is an opportunity for staff to present what we think is a pretty complete draft of an entire update to the formerly known, well, actually currently known 2001 employee handbook, which is in current circulation. So we're very excited to bring this. It has legally required updates as well as some recommended updated policies, and I think I mentioned in here an acknowledgement by all employees that they received this policy book. It is a reference book. It's not great reading, you know, from page 1 to page 150 or what have you, but I do feel that it's a very good work product that staff, management, and the bargaining unit represented employees have collaboratively come together and read through and had an opportunity to update clarifying language where the previous policy book might have been a little bit unclear in terms of interpretation of particular policies. We had the opportunity to make some very fine improvements in this document. So proudly present this to you this evening for, again, discussion and direction, and we'll bring back a future opportunity for adoption by the board.
Well, it's quite an effort. And, we went through it, I went through it, two of the, at the HR and the Finance Committee, and it's quite extensive, quite well written, and you can read it. And as Alicia said, it's a handbook, and you get to refer to it if something comes up. Which is how it works. And it's sorted by policy, so if we want to change any of these policies, we just change, one piece.
My understanding is that this was started really, the rewrite by RGS, originally, and then who in the district then spearheaded the rest of it? Just for the record.
Business manager.
Just for the record, it's an amazing piece of work.
I thought it was very, very well written. It's easy to read. It's well laid out, and it's important that the staff are apparently, from what we're being told, on board. And so that's, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Oh, right, this has all been through meet and confer?
Yeah.
It's been through discussions, yes.
So I think the phrase apple cart and upset come into play, and so I'm looking forward to this continuing and finalizing it. Anybody have any other comments?
No, I mean, if you look, go ahead, you first.
Yeah, this question.
I was just wondering about the sick leave and the being late. Is there a number of times you can call in sick a year? Because I didn't see that.
Well, there's an accrual basis. So each full-time employee accrues, I think it's a number of hours.
I understand that, but it's the times you call in sick.
That's what she's talking about.
How many times can you call in sick
Sick
leave?
leave.
That's in the union. This is not a policy. That's not a policy book. That's a union contract.
You accrue 8 hours of sick leave
About a
for
month.
each month,
Yeah,
and you can accrue up to 1,000
Yeah,
hours.
1,000.
I understand the accrual, but let's say an employee calls out 50 times sick. Do we have anything to kind of follow that or track that?
Well, the law protects employees who need to take medical leave. So there's a family medical leave law that,
ACH.
yeah, that if you're talking about, is there a disciplinary action for employees who abuse sick leave?
Right.
Yes, there is.
Okay, that was my question.
Okay.
Was about accrual. And then, do we have a marijuana policy yet? We don't.
No.
Okay. what's happening with that?
Well, most of our employees are Class A drivers, have Class A licenses, so they're subject to the Department of Transportation random drug testing.
Yep.
And marijuana is still an illegal substance according to federal law.
Okay.
Yeah, and that,
But
that's
we're
addressed.
It was in here.
Yeah, it is in here, yeah, I read it.
Oh, about the.
Drug testing.
The dog.
Drug
Yeah.
testing, the DOT.
Right.
Okay. that's
We were gonna
all.
change, and we were gonna change just the acronym from DOT to actually say Department of Transportation.
California.
That was one change in here, but that's just an add.
So I'm sorry, you're right, the drug-free workplace
I
policy
didn't know
does
what
address
dog.
marijuana use, yes.
Why did tell? Then I knew.
Yeah, yeah, they're class
The
one.
drivers have Class A licenses.
You know, and the beauty of this also, if you look back on that first thing that we were given this evening about how we've been spending that spreadsheet, the legal fees over the years, and back 5 years or 4 years ago, it was a tremendous amount of personnel issues. And my understanding was based on a very loosely written, it wasn't exactly clear always what the policy was, and we were fighting that. And as these policies have become more and more clear over the years, it's been coming down, and hopefully this will solidify that, and there'll be less and less question that, if an employee has a question, they can look it up in the policy manual. If they can't find it there, they can go to human resources, and there should be no question about what's going on. It should greatly reduce the amount of ambiguity in the system.
That's a great point.
Any public comment? Seeing none, we have, it's a no action item, so I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is accept the fiscal year 2017-18 business plan year-end reports. So this would be,
But we do want her to bring back the final quality. We were great with it, and you're gonna bring it back again. I guess that was understood.
And you are meeting with the representative employees to have their blessing on the whole
Yes,
thing.
one last time, I suspect. Yeah, I anticipate.
okay.
So item 10 is for the board to accept the fiscal year 17-18 business plan year-end report. So as the board has done, I guess, the last couple of years, created a business plan for, with goals and objectives for district actions based on the 2016 strategic plan. And this last year, in 17-18, were a number of goals that have been categorized here on the spreadsheet. And if I did a little summary, I would say it looks like there's about 13 that were absolutely completed, and then about 19 that are active. One of those actually being the personal policy book, so we'll be able to cross that off and move one into the completed pile. And the other active items, I would suggest that the board might be interested in putting those on the next fiscal year business plan for 18-19. And with that, I would turn it back to the board for discussion.
And it was only the one future plan, which was the new connection fee study, so.
Yes, and that was just a recommendation based on staffing and resources.
We should do
I
that
have a
before we get
question
them back again.
about,
Maybe they'll give me 80% without giving a dime. Go ahead.
I have a question about the smart meters. Can you?
Which one, Pam?
That's on page one.
Sorry,
future plan.
page one, the second box. It
Yes,
says partner with MMWD to evaluate benefits of converting high-volume commercial customers to smart meters for water and wastewater billing. Can you give some info on that?
yes, I'd be happy to. So the background to this is that I think the board has received a number of comments from owners or operators of restaurant facilities who've experienced fairly high sewer service charges based on their winter water usage. And the response has been to recommend that those owners and operators install separate water meter for their landscaping activities, because that sometimes, provides additional water usage that would unnecessarily be calculated toward their sewer service rates. And the idea, I believe, for this particular goal was that RVSD staff and MMWD staff could work together on a program to, outreach to these owners and operators. Unfortunately, as I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, and is noted in the comments, we just haven't had the staffing resources to do that kind of new program.
But that would only be clean water going in, not sanitation water coming out.
It would be 2 water meters, one for the building and one for landscaping.
Yeah.
But the MMWD charges about $10,000 to install a new water meter, and some people don't want to, understandably make that kind of investment. They just, kind of have to suck it in the gut a little bit every time they get their sewer service charge.
But are you saying these commercial businesses, for the most part, have the smart meters already?
No, they don't. That's what I'm saying. They don't have.
So you're suggesting too. I
Yes.
know that one of the complainants we had was a restaurant that doesn't have any landscaping, so they don't need 2 meters. A smart
Right.
meter might make a lot of sense for them if they had, and I believe the smart meter allows this, they have access to the reports that if they were getting large bills from us, which they're complaining about, and they look in December and see that they have an enormous amount of water usage, they might go looking for leaks.
Right, that's right. That's a good leak.
Is this, it isn't really smart meters, it's a separate irrigation meter.
That's how I understood it, but you're right, it is written as a smart meter.
It's a separate irrigation meter. A smart meter is an entirely different
Right.
situation.
Yeah,
But, and if you think about it, MMWD should not charge a full connection charge for separating the potable water use with the irrigation, because the meter charge should be based on additional water use. And we're just saying, hey, we're just trying to measure our current water use, unless they're adding an acre of, landscaping or something.
right.
But,
I think it's also complicated by the fact that a lot of the operators, the restaurant operators, are not actually owners of the properties. And so they don't necessarily want to invest in, say, an infrastructure upgrade on the property.
but they do get the water bill.
But they get the water bill.
Yeah, and the sewer bill.
And the sewer bill.
The sewer bill goes to the property owner and they pay us.
Right, they pass it on. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for the clarification. It is a distinction. It's not, the smart meter is
So it's a future
separate.
plan. I think we'd all be interested in hearing a little bit more about it. I think that it makes sense for our clients or our high-volume customers to get onto smart meters. I gotta tell you, I'm in the business, most of my clients don't have a lot of landscaping water, so they don't need 2 meters. They could
Right.
use a smart meter.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't, that's not long.
So the
Yeah,
smart meter just,
Don't we all have, I think I have a smart meter.
They put one in certain areas of the community unless you objected to it. And then I think that some of the communities passed an ordinance saying, even if you object to it, they can put it in. But I don't know if they put them in commercial buildings yet. I don't know what they did. But that's why they'd be interested in hearing more information.
but I'm not sure if I understand personally what the advantage to having a smart meter is versus.
I can tell you what the
Okay.
benefit is. First off, a lot of the benefit is for the MMWD and when the usage is and all that. But if you're tapped into reading it online and you're observing your water usage before the bill comes, you can alter your behavior. That's smart.
Okay, got it.
As opposed to finding out 3 months later because you
That
didn't
you
go
had a
forward.
leak, right.
It's like, oh crap. So, you're trying to get ahead of
Large
it.
users get their bills monthly for the water district.
Everyone else is bi-monthly.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else
But
on?
I like the idea of us talking to our big customers about how to, what's happening, so they understand the bill. I think that part of it was great. I was worried we were gonna start buying smart meters.
Oh,
No.
right now.
Okay.
Okay, there's a lot of other stuff on this. Would anyone on the board like to address any of the others?
Well,
Human resources
one of
policy
them-
book obviously is being done, and competency-based training is being done, and a lot of these things that,
Updated 5-year infrastructure asset management plan. We're gonna need that for our
Rate study.
rate study. We're gonna need a good CIP, because we all know that the capital improvement program is driving our rates. So that maybe needs to be done prior to
the rate study.
Yes.
It's probably, it's pretty close right now. I mean, you probably have a log of it.
We have some very targeted things that we need consultant support with, and hopefully getting an RFP on it, so we met with
But
another
I
consultant.
would like to review that, because non-capital spend continues to be very high. And I was hoping we could start to phase it down a bit.
Well, I think that we can't until we see a substantial reduction in I&I. The State Water Resource Board is expecting that.
Well, I think we can if we do all the red projects.
Well, we're going to find out. I mean, this is something that, the smart meters are going to give us some more information each winter. We'll get more information, but, again, the fact that we're on the permit now, and the permit requires us to address mixing at CMSA, the only way we can lower mixing at CMSA is to lower I&I. And the only way we can lower I&I is to continue investing in our capital program. And I don't see how we can slow that down until we have some evidence that we're going to not be denied a permit renewal.
They're not measuring that, I mean, the regional board.
They're looking at mixing, which happens because we
They're
have,
looking at blending.
yeah, they're looking at blending, but the blending and mixing happens because of
Okay,
I&I.
but what we have on our permit is a list of projects that we're going to do.
Mhm.
And we supply that list to
Right.
the regional board. And,
But if you remember, at CMSA, they required us, at CMSA, I was sitting in for one of you two as the alternate delegate, they required us to come up with a plan to address blending.
Blending.
And our response was lowering I&I, and they accepted that.
Our response was to do these improvements.
In order,
We never guaranteed we were going to lower I&I. We said we're going to do all these projects that we're going to do. And we basically funded almost all of those projects.
yeah, that's true, but
Okay, one, and two, they're reviewing the blending law.
yeah, I appreciate that, yeah.
Okay, so we might not have blending anymore. What, I don't see with this administration getting more strict. But notwithstanding that, we want to continue to fix our pipes and all. But these are 80 projects that last for 80 years. We don't have to do them all in 6 years.
I agree, but I'm going to remind you that when that request came from the State Regional Water Board to CMSA, and we said we were doing these projects, we specifically said we are addressing I&I, and this is how we're doing it. So it was very specific. Our solution was not to stop blending, but to lower I&I in order to eliminate or mitigate the need to blend.
Well, we were making an argument. We were saying, do we have, this is what I think anyway, do we have to blend? We're doing this other stuff in this other part. And they said, well, okay, well, we'll put you on the permit. We were making an argument. It's not, we're not 100% sure, right? That it's going to work? I mean, I think
That's right.
what
Oh, no,
Tom-
that's right.
what
Oh,
Tom
no,
said.
I agree with that.
We don't have to see, because here's where I disagree with you. We don't have to see a reduction in I&I. We've just got to build these projects.
Well, I agree with that, but I also agree with, they don't have to renew the permit. They don't want the blending. Now, again, that's going up in front of federal judicial issues, and that's fine.
They don't have
But
to,
they don't
that's
like
right.
the blending, and they don't want us to blend, and they told us to stop blending, and we don't feel that they have the right to do that, and the authority to do that, and the regulatory rights to do that. But that's what they said, and they said, how are you going to address this? And we said, by lowering I&I by doing these projects. So that was our response.
Well, we're doing the projects.
Right.
We're doing
Well,
everything.
and when we get into the new infrastructure asset management plan, right? We'll see how many of the really bad pipes, if any, we have left. I mean, it was years ago that Greg told me, I would figure it out with Vivian, that if we go fix the worst 5%, we're gonna reduce I&I by 50%. So we do have these numbers. And
Yeah.
Tom's just saying we don't,
They haven't seen it.
Well, let me say,
We
when I first came on, one of my first meetings with Greg, I said that I would like us to have a goal of reducing I&I by 40% in 10 years. And he said, that's possible, but that's going to be really aggressive. So I don't know where the 50% came up. He thought 40% was extremely aggressive. I'd still like to meet that. And if we do that, I think we can get our permits and be in compliance with the state board, regional state board, even if they're clearly don't have the regulatory authority to tell us not to blend.
My understanding also, when we agreed to be on the permit, begrudgingly.
We were forced onto the permit, weren't we?
Yeah, but we stopped making a hassle about it, was that we've agreed to do these things, and the regional control board gives us some latitude, whereas we discover things with our smart covers and other things, that plan can change over time. If we discover there's a section that we had never known before over here somewhere that we discover now is, oops, that's where all the water's coming in, well then that project can become a red project, and some of those other projects which we had agreed to do on the permit, we can swap them because we're going to learn, more things as we go along.
Catherine, do you think that we can achieve 40% I&I reduction? Is that a realistic target?
That people get such different results with I&I reduction.
Yep.
It's a really hard goal to hit. And I think what the important thing for the blending, you're trying to shave the peak. So you're trying to take that top part off. So there's some really targeted things that we could do that could get to that wouldn't reduce overall 40%. So it is impressive that the people do the same thing and get, some people get a 10% reduction,
The other thing
30% reduction for the same type of project.
As we fix more and more of our infrastructure, our pipes that we own, so we're not leaking anywhere, we may be sending more and more of the water from the laterals that would have been passing through our system and maybe escaping along the way to CMSA. And even though we might be fixing our I&I in our system, we have parts of, it's going to be a learning thing as we go along with our smart covers. But if we really seal up our pipes, well, now we're seeing, a rise. We know that it's coming from the laterals, and with the technologies that Steve is doing to follow these things, we ought to be able to identify them and go out into the community and really impress upon our constituents that you've got to fix the problem. And so as we button up our system, we may actually see some amount of rise, which is going to indicate we have to help to fix other parts in the system. The laterals, all 200 miles of them in the system.
One of the goals mentioned here is to change our I&Is to 900 per year. It's currently about 600, which is huge, enormous for a district this size. So that's a great goal. Let me point out that I understand exactly what you're saying about fixing the pipe sometimes increases the flow. But what we found in a result, and I remember you specifically mentioning this, Tom, is the flow is going down. The average daily flow is going down.
The dry weather flow is going down.
So if the dry weather flow goes down, with the smoke testing that's going to be going on in Fairfax in the next few weeks, we're going to find, as was found in Kentfield and Larkspur, I think, if I remember correctly, we're going to find some of the gutters are going into our system. And
Just a couple, I thought.
Yeah, you found a number of them, didn't you? So if
Some big locations.
and when does the Fairfax smoke testing begin?
Next week.
Yeah. Because I asked you to remind me because I want to go out there in 6 days.
No, the 6th.
The 6th,
The
August
6th.
6th. Okay, so I
But
can
we
go-
won't
I
be
can
in
go-
Fairfax. We're going to start in Larkspur and then move to Fairfax shortly after.
Steve has a comment.
Steve?
No, and through the aggressive smoke testing that John's going to be doing, we could find a 12-inch storm drain and that we're draining. And I've seen that happen before in many cities when I work for a contractor, and that just wipes out most of your I&I inflow. So, I mean, it's about fighting the smoking gun. You can go fix, several miles of pipe, but one 12-inch line going into our system, that's so I'm looking forward to John's smoke
If you could
testing.
find something like that or a big flow and just divert it to Las Colinas, I think we could, as long as they don't know about it.
Wow. And also, we were just talking about dry weather flow, but we don't blend in dry weather.
One
We
direction.
blend in very extreme
Send
Wet weather.
I'm just saying
or correction.
the flow on a dry day has gone down,
Yeah.
not up, so that's good.
Yeah, that
That's
means,
good.
That's good
Yeah.
signal.
But what we found is that our wet weather flow is higher.
Hmm.
It's actually
Maybe
higher
because of that.
Because we can pump more. And
And we're during
our
higher.
sewers can hold more. That's why we missed our permit.
This year.
This year.
This one time.
at the treatment plant, yeah.
Okay.
All right,
One
we
thing
accepted this year, sorry.
We agree on the need, that's for sure.
Yeah. Are there any other comments on this?
We are doing, I&I reduction investigations and initial pilot projects this year to look at what happens if we joint ground, what happens if we, to try and look at in our system, we have perfectly good pipe, if we put ground into the joints, what does that do to reduce the I&I? So that's an effort that we're getting consultant support.
Oh, yeah, and that's a lot less expensive.
Oh, yeah.
A lot less.
Replacing, yeah.
Okay. All right, is there any public comment on this? Seeing none, this was
item 10.
accepted, so do I have a motion?
I move that we accept the district's fiscal year 2017-18 business plan year-end report and provide comments and or direction regarding the next fiscal year business plan.
Well, have we
did.
provided comments
Anything
and
new?
direction?
I think I have enough to provide a draft to the board in the future.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries, thank you. Number 11 is consideration of appointment of officers, representatives, and committees for fiscal year. We have a list here, I'm sorry?
Good question.
Okay.
Don't we need to swear us in?
You get sworn in when you're a new board member, when you get.
Oh, so it's only once, the first
No,
time.
if you get reelected.
Oh,
We got reelected, but there was no election.
Good point.
So
Oh, okay,
Pam
yeah, I had
and
thought-
Tom and I,
oh.
and
Yeah, I think that's a very good point.
But
The election-
they're actually
they-
starting new terms.
Yeah,
right now,
Right,
three of
and
you.
we usually wait until the results of the election have been certified by.
but there was no
the-
election.
there was no
Yeah.
election, we're certified.
Has it been certified for everybody else?
I don't know.
It would have been typically by this time, but
I say we don't swear them in and we just nullify their votes, so they don't this vote here. You and me can run the meeting. No, I think that's a very good point. It is the beginning of the year. There's not going to be an election. There is not going to be a certification by the district board, but they are beginning their new terms. I think that it's appropriate on the safe and appropriate side to swear them in.
I swear to tell
Can
the
we do it
truth,
late?
the
Right.
whole truth,
No.
and
Do it
nothing
late?
but the truth.
Huh?
Can we do it in August?
No, because its new term is starting now.
Yeah, you should do it. I would have to pull up the language.
Okay, you want me to?
Should we take a break?
Okay, so, no, we can go ahead and consider the next part because we can swear you in a minute. We can talk about this. We're going to have to do this. Julie, was there any other additional information on board members?
Yes, we have a reference document from last year showing the board compensation information.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that include going to workshops, or does that just include board meetings here?
Yeah, I didn't get it.
Well, if you're going on a approved
Marin County.
training like CMSA, it does.
Right, but the workshop itself, is that included in there?
If it's approved by the board.
Doug, can we take a 3-minute?
Sure. Done. 3 minutes, 5 minutes.
Okay, county election results?
I'll be a little bit official.
I'm just gonna pass it to everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a whole bunch of them. I apologize. I
Oh,
didn't
it's not a
realize
problem.
You want me to drive or you want to drive?
You could.
Okay, just got a report from last year about compensation.
you could just bring up the meeting of July 2000.
July
Andrea,
Yeah.
you could bring up the meeting on
Oh,
YouTube of
July
July 2016 when we were sworn in, and there you'll have it.
Well,
Well, I wanted my granddaughter to be here.
I Look at the oath.
It's all right. She can see it on the video.
oh yeah, we were supposed to remove this thing.
Yeah.
I don't understand this. Where's the app?
I'm on the page now. There is no update, that's just purely reference. Jen was asking about which, how board members are compensated.
And how often they meet.
Which is in the second chart on item 11.
There's a thing about the
Okay.
doesn't have the language.
You don't have language?
Working on it.
All right. All right, so while they're working on that, we can go ahead and have this discussion. The discussion is for the board members.
Well, we got
What?
one for Michael. Okay, then Michael. Okay.
Yeah, he's-
Are we officially returned?
yes, we are back in session. Okay, so where do we want to start? Why don't we start at the top?
Well, I would like to nominate Doug again as president.
Yeah.
I think he's
Got
done
it
really
too?
good.
Okay. Dang.
All right, so you have that?
Okay, same
We'll
thing.
come back to that. We can do this before we do that.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. President.
We'll do this before we do that, but I would like to swear them in tonight.
Okay,
But we can go ahead and move
So,
forward.
just to reiterate, I think Doug's done a very good job with outreach, keeping on topics, doing a lot of extra work, but also staying focused and keeping our meetings well, well served. And I would really like to see Doug do one more year.
Let's see. Okay, other nominees?
I'd like to nominate Tom.
And who, how did we go, how was it, how did it go? Who was last? Mary was last. Who was before Mary?
Michael.
And before Michael?
And then Frank.
Me, Michael.
No, then me.
No.
4 years ago.
Did you do it twice?
I ran second year, I was on against Frank.
Yeah.
It's the biggest group.
Okay.
I have no further nominations. Is that what you were looking at?
Yes. Okay. Okay. Well, then, we have two nominees. Do we have a second?
I'll second Tom.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So that's, the president is Tom.
And I would like to thank Doug
Yes.
for last year, because I think he did.
Wait a second. Let me vote.
Okay.
So what's the motion?
The motion is President Tom.
No.
I thought she made a motion for you.
She did, but the second was for you. So we
I
took a
don't quite
vote.
understand how you're doing this, so.
So what I did is I asked her,
But you, I was the first one, so, but you're going to Tom's second.
no. I called for nominees.
Mhm,
We got two.
mhm.
I then called for a second, and we got a second on one. And once we have a second, we have to have a vote. So I called for a vote.
Okay.
And so all in favor of Tom for president again?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Okay, one opposed. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to state, we're going to do this, I'm going to be the president until. Moving on. Secretary. All right, do we have nominees for secretary?
Who'd like to be?
I'm happy to serve as secretary.
Okay.
I nominate Marin.
I second that. Do we have other nominees? I'm sorry, do we have other nominees for secretary? We don't. That I'll second, and all in favor of Mary for secretary?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Do we have nominees for treasurer?
I nominate Michael.
Do we have other nominees for treasurer? Do we have a second for Michael for treasurer?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so Michael is treasurer. Alternate secretary. Do we have a nominee for alternate secretary?
I nominate Doug. Right? You can serve
I'll
as
second.
alternate secretary.
Do we have another nominee? With that, do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, aye, Doug.
Doug.
Alternate treasurer.
I nominate Pam.
Any other nominees?
Nominate Pam. Sure, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of Pam for alternate treasurer?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, aye. Any opposed? None. All right, the CMSA Board, Michael Bornstein is on that until July 2019. CMSA Commissioner Thomas Gaffney's term ends now.
I nominate Doug.
Oh, okay. Do we have any other nominees?
I have a question, will Mr. Gaffney still attend the finance committee
Yes.
meetings of the Central Marin Sanitation Agency on our behalf?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And I told him I couldn't be on the board anymore. That's okay.
Yeah,
Okay, with that,
I second that.
we have a second. All in favor of me being on CMSA?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none? Okay, now hang on. I'd like to take this opportunity to suggest that sometime in the next months, we don't have to do it tonight, we address that as an issue, the 2-year on and 2-year off, because I don't think it serves this board very well.
I agree.
And now that I'm on, I think we should definitely look at that even at much longer term.
Well, and I was gonna ask, is that a self-imposed
I think it was.
limit, term limit?
Oh, yeah, because all the rest of them say,
Okay.
Al Borro's been on for
Yeah.
18
Yeah.
years.
Al's
He
still
hasn't-
on there?
He's not still on.
He never goes.
Technically,
His
he's
replacement, his alternate goes every time.
Okay.
Officially, the alternate,
He's just gotten on.
he just got, okay.
Must be
All right,
on.
we have typically, we made a policy here that the CMSA alternate would be a primary alternate, which I think I agree with. So who do we have any nominees for CMSA primary alternate?
There it is.
No, thank you.
Tom.
I'm never looking for.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, Tom.
Yes.
You're going to be on the finance there, is that, how does that work?
He just goes
You
to the
don't have to be
finance
on the board
committee.
to be on the finance committee.
Yeah, I
Okay.
second Tom as
All
the
right,
first
so-
alternate,
all
so
right.
if either of you guys can't go, Tom goes.
All right, so that's going to be the first alternate, and then after that, whoever can't go gets asked. And so I have a first and a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, none, okay. Representative,
I have a question to the board president and to legal counsel. Is there any reason why they can't change the term of the CMSA board appointment at this meeting?
yeah, I'm just saying we should talk about it, I don't think we need to do it now.
Oh, okay. I don't know
I would have
exactly the source of it is, so I can't answer your question, because I don't know exactly where it came from.
You're not on anymore, you just got to knock off.
Yeah, let's talk about it later.
Representative to CSRMA Board.
Michael, why don't you do that?
Yeah,
Go
you know,
ahead.
I've been going to the meetings at CASA for the last few times, and I signed up to go this time.
Good.
Great.
Michael.
Second, any other alternative, any other appointees? No. All in favor? Because you seconded it, so I'm
Yes,
taking that as a
yes,
second.
yes.
Alternate to that position?
Um,
CRMSA, how often does that meet?
See, it's California
Yes, or
State.
Twice a year.
I'll be the alternate.
Twice a year?
Okay.
Okay. Do I have any other nominees?
I'm there anyway at CASA.
All in favor of Tom being the alternate representative?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Representative to attend the LAFCO meetings.
I don't think we should do this anymore.
The LAFCO?
Yeah.
Well, I never go unless we're on the agenda, because it's a waste of time and money.
Yeah, it's a waste of
But we
time.
are gonna.
We're going to be on the agenda, I'm not
Yeah.
going
You're probably right, you could probably eliminate it, it's probably.
But what about this August
Yeah.
8th meeting?
Well, that,
to.
I
He just
really
said,
think
Tom
the
just said we
board,
should all go.
I'm planning to go August 8th if I can make it.
August 9th.
I think I'm gonna be out of town.
Because,
August
and
9th.
not as a pay deal, I think we
it's,
should.
we're not a voting member, we're just
Yeah,
observing,
it's-
so
yeah.
I think
I
it's
think
open
we should
to
eliminate
anybody.
it, but we should.
Are we in favor of eliminating it? Do we have a motion to eliminate it?
I move that we eliminate an official position.
We have a motion, we have a second. I'm not sure who made the motion, I'm going with, Michael made the motion, you made the second. All in favor? Aye. So LAFCO's out unless it's on the agenda.
And staff would like to make another point of information, which is, so the LAFCO meeting is currently scheduled for August 9th, which is a Thursday, and that overlaps with the CASA conference in Monterey, which is the 7th through,
That you could.
Why don't
the
we-
8th through the
wait a
10th.
minute.
I apologize.
Is
Why don't
everybody
we
going?
ask the interim general manager to request of LAFCO that they postpone that?
No, it's already set.
Doesn't matter if it's already said, it's 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. You
I
can
know,
ask.
but they do the first, or second Thursday of the month.
I'm planning on going, I can make it.
Yeah.
Typical LAFCO, they've already got it already wrong. That's why I want to.
I'm comfortable with our staff attending.
The first meeting.
I'll be there.
Representative to NBWA Board.
Pardon me, may I have a
We moved to eliminate
To eliminate.
representation.
Okay,
Okay.
and the
First
motion
and
was made.
second.
First, great, thank you.
Representative to NBWA Board.
Pam?
Thank you.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's Pam, thank you. Okay, Standing Finance Committee. We have typically made this the president of the board, so that I would I would call for nomination of the incoming president because that's what we decided.
Tom?
Mary has made that, do I have a second?
Wait.
The first position.
That's fine, yes.
All right, is that a second, Pam?
Yes.
Thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that's Gaffney. We have a second Financial Committee appointee.
Who would you like to do that?
I would want, I'd like to stay on, but,
Yeah, okay, I nominate Tom.
okay. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Standing Human Resources Committee is, it's Scylla and Borstein. I thought it was Gaffney and
I
Scylla.
know, we kept trying to tell you that. I was just there because
Okay, you only have to get it right for another 5 minutes.
Well, do we have, who would like to serve on that?
I will.
I will, but I don't need to necessarily. It's only quarterly, and I managed to screw up and not make this quarter. It's yesterday, pardon me, but that was
Well,
an
you know, I
email.
could, if you don't want, I could do it because I'm already going to the finance committee. So, you know, we just have 2 meetings.
No, I think it's better to have 4. I think it's better.
To have different.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is
I'm fine.
important, yeah.
You love numbers and I love words.
I
so
can go, I can
So
go if it's
I
on
nominate
Monday,
Scylla
but
and
I
Borstein.
saw that you're wanting to change it
To
to
Tuesdays.
Tuesday, and I work every other Tuesday. So I could do it as long as you, I don't know how it's gonna fall.
It's gonna fall
I
Tuesday.
couldn't say, it's
Why
it's
are-
always the
Why are you
day
changing it to
before.
Tuesday?
Because generally, Mondays are more difficult.
For everybody.
For most,
Yeah.
and it didn't.
And you don't
seem-
wanna do it late afternoon?
I'm open to suggestions. If you would like to do it Monday afternoon to accommodate a committee appointment, but absolutely staff can make that change.
It's 4 times a year, so
It's
it's
4
not
times
that
a year.
big.
And it's always held the week of the board meeting.
Oh.
Typically on the Monday, sometimes on the Tuesday, so we can put it back from the Monday or leave it on the Tuesday as the board
Great.
just decides.
I nominate Scylla and Borstein.
Fine.
Sounds like a vaudeville act.
Is that- I don't know if
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
interested.
No, I like doing it. It's nice.
I'm not allowed to second Scylla Borstein, but I'll accept the nomination. I
Okay.
mean, I can only nominate, I can only
All in favor?
second one part of that, right?
Aye.
Okay.
So
Carry.
was there a second?
Well,
Yes.
you can second yourself. I think.
Oh,
You can second
I
yourself?
think so.
No, you
I
can't.
think it's
No,
better
you
if it's
can't.
not. Well,
No,
somebody
no.
else can second it.
So who was the first?
Me.
And Scylla was the second. Oh, yeah, she can, oh, yeah, you can second your own nomination, you just can't second your own second. If that's what, I misunderstood what you're saying. Sure you can. Why not?
Probably can't.
Yeah, you can vote for yourself. My mom always told me never vote for yourself, but she's never been in a close race.
She can vote, she's seconding the motion.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a prohibition, just optically it would be better.
I know. Okay, the ad hoc committee for the general manager's annual performance
We
review.
didn't do a vote on
You didn't
that.
do a vote.
Aye, all in favor of that? Ad hoc, aye, all opposed?
Wait a minute, where are you?
Ad hoc
Going
committee,
too fast.
oh no, standing HR is where we are.
Okay.
That's where we're voting on,
Yeah.
standing HR, Solon Borstein, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Thank you. Ad hoc committee for outreach, are we still doing that? Or that is an as needed?
Ad hoc as needed.
Are we doing it?
But you only met once last year.
It's so, yes, I think you guys
I don't
have
think you need it.
once a year.
And we've turned it over
The
to
board itself,
Great.
well, yeah, we have a hired,
3,
I don't think you
what's
need
it
it.
called?
do I have a motion to?
Right, 3M makes the tape.
Do I have a motion to disband the ad hoc committee for the for outreach?
For outreach. Got
I
it.
could suggest that on the outside, if we happen to need it, we could roll it into HR once a quarter.
I would change that, no, I'd suggest that if we have to meet it, we bring it before the entire board. It's
That's
not-
fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd rather, so, a motion to disband the ad hoc committee for outreach and communications. I do have one from Pam, do I have a second?
Second.
Mary, and all in favor? Aye, that's done. Ad hoc committee for the general manager's annual performance review.
Unneeded this year.
Huh?
Unneeded this year.
Right,
We don't have one.
We don't need to have this committee until a year from now.
I agree. So let's
Skip it.
postpone, let's suspend it.
Suspend it.
All in favor of suspending it? Can I have a motion for that?
I move we suspend.
Tom, second?
Second.
Yes.
Second, Michael. So all in favor to suspend it?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, thank you. Ad hoc committee for the annual business plan.
Yeah, I was curious why we didn't have a meeting for this plan.
Good point.
This is a report
I mean, I
of
really
last
think-
year's plan.
I really had a bunch of ideas, I didn't want to drag the meeting out tonight, but how come we didn't have a meeting?
Because this wasn't if I can answer that question. Staff was providing a year-end report to the board's business plan from last fiscal year. This isn't a business plan for this fiscal year.
Right, but we didn't meet last year.
But we didn't meet.
Oh, I don't know that.
I move we suspend this committee.
I'm not aware of
Come
it.
on, no,
I
Well, the
think
business plan will come to the board.
Yeah, but we can bring it up during a board meeting,
Yeah,
have
but-
all five of us.
It's pretty
It's
involved.
like a financial committee. We
I
have
mean,
something
I don't know.
finances and it comes from the board.
I think it would be important for us to meet. I do.
We haven't met, so we've done no harm. I suggest we continue this for 1 year and actually have a meeting. And then we can decide whether the full board appreciates the subcommittee board.
Sure.
But we haven't met, so,
Right then.
and that was probably just an omission. That should have been,
You didn't meet at all last
No,
year
we did not.
to develop the business plan?
no, we did not.
Okay. Just so you met as a full board, not as an ad
That's
hoc
correct.
committee. I see.
So I nominate
You
Kelly
approve
and
it.
Megs to carry forward.
Good. Second.
Second so all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So that's Pam and myself on.
I
Yeah.
have a question. I'm concerned about, and I bring this up all the time, so I go to memory, but we still don't have anything to do with education with the community, with kids. And I had a wonderful lunch with Judy Schreiber recently. Their district is involved in the high school. They're doing like microbead. The kids go out and they have all these things they're doing with the high schools. We have 3 colleges here and various schools. I don't know if anybody's interested, maybe Doug. Is there, and we talked about this
Yeah.
recently.
Well, the
And
reason
you've
we
got
talked about
ideas
it, and I
too.
said, I absolutely, what I also said is, one of the things, you're talking about Las Colinas Sanitary, but they're like sort of a combination of a sanitary district and a water district and a park district. Sort of
Right,
like MMWD is a park and a
Right.
water district. So they have more, but I agree, but what I suggest we do, Pam, is that we've just disbanded the Communications and Outreach Committee. What I would ask to do,
I think it's education and outreach.
Sure.
Right.
What I would,
Sorry.
No, I was simply saying-
NB5 is not doing that. NB5 is not going to be like, let's go to
Yeah,
basics
no, I agree.
and do a
So
presentation.
my suggestion is that we ask staff to put this on the agenda at a soon, not too far away, agenda, and let's discuss what we want to do, come up with some ideas. And knowing that it's coming up on the agenda, I'd say people should consider this. At this time, and by the way, I want to point out, one of the things that I asked to do is to change in future the verbal reports by board members and staff and requests for future. I think the request for future agenda items can stay where it is, but the verbal reports by board members and staff, I asked to put that, and with the approval of the board and the incoming president, I wanted that to put under E, under the standing reports. It's the beginning. I'm telling you why, and I think I mentioned this to Felicia. If you ever go on a horse ride with trail horses and the horses smell the barn, at the end of the meeting, everybody wants to get the hell out of here, and it's like, so what can you tell us that you did that's really exciting? And people are like, yeah, kids, come on. And so I want to put that at the beginning. So with the request of, without, I think that should be done. What I'd like to do this time before I adjourn this meeting is I'd like to have these 3 renewed members sworn in.
Wait, are we going
Can I
to
do part of
do a request for agenda?
We can,
items?
that'll come after.
Okay.
So let's swear them in.
Do you want to give out?
You need a Bible.
You don't need a Bible.
I don't know.
Okay, so I guess what we'll do is, so we have three that need to take the oath, Michael, Tom, and Pam, correct?
We have a constitution.
You can put your hand on it if you'd like,
Yep.
but you don't have to. So I guess what I'll do is, if nobody else is clamoring to do it,
Yep.
I could just have you repeat, if you'd like to, all at the same
Yep.
time. What's that?
Absolutely, you should stand, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think
Let's
that's
stand.
for
I am.
the three of you.
And so you can all say it simultaneously. I state your name.
I,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of the board member of the Ross Valley Sanitary District
The duties of the office of
board member of the Ross Valley Sanitary District,
according
formerly known as District Number 1.
according to the best of my ability.
According to the best of my ability.
Thank you all very much. Last item.
That was very good.
And we
Yes, it
saved,
was. Yeah, that-
and we saved the district $40,000.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Unfortunately, we ended up with you three, but you know. The last item on the agenda is verbal reports by board members and staff and requests for future agenda items.
It's getting late.
Yeah, I know. Michael?
I'm good, thank you.
Pam?
So I don't know if you all get the Creek Chronicles for Friends of Cordillera Creek, but I think we are still giving them money, am I right, Felicia?
We did last year.
Yes, we did last fiscal year.
Okay, so one of the projects, I just happened to look, is that they are collaborating with College of Marin on the removal of invasive trees that threaten the RVSD's Kentfield Pump Station. Their removal also benefited habitat enhancement at the ecology study area.
That's the project we contributed to.
That's awesome. My agenda item is, I would like to get a report from Justin, because the really, is a bad problem in Fairfax that went to the mayor, that went to the manager, and then it came to me. And I don't know what's happening, but there's been issues with Ranger. But I would just like to hear from Justin, how are the projects going? What's happening? Is the signage going well? I know these town meetings are coming up, but I think they're too late now. They've been out in the field for weeks, especially Fairfax. But I'd like to hear from Justin to understand, because we did hire him to make sure things go smoothly, and it was rather embarrassing. Major. Okay, that's it.
Mary? Tom? So I think I asked Felicia to call the Kentfield ratepayer referencing the issue of, this is the paved road issue, where I thought we were good, and then I got an email from her and she wasn't so happy, but it seems like we're offering her $8,000, which is awfully good, I think. What was the result of that conversation?
Last I heard, she and actually Justin also is involved with that property owner, are finalizing the details of that payment.
Did you speak to her?
I did,
And
yeah. And she was very happy to have the further explanation, which I think just, she didn't quite understand the offer that Ross Valley was making.
That's
Towards-
I think
towards
that's a
the
very
paving
generous
project.
offer.
Yes.
Kathleen?
I've heard that she's on vacation this week, so no action yet, no final items yet. She's not.
Okay. Last I spoke with her, she was happy, and I told her if she had any further questions or she needed any further clarification, that she could.
Okay. Thank you very much. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.
Actually, we have some interim general manager reports.
Oh, I'm so
I'll make
sorry.
some quick ones.
No,
And we'll put it earlier on the agenda.
The meeting is not adjourned because I adjourned the meeting and I was told by council I don't need to have a vote, so I'm now unadjourning it.
So just a couple of quick things. I want to recognize the board and staff. Peter and Julia did a great job putting together four agendas last week. The first rollout into board clerk world. So thank you. And thanks also to Catherine and to Stephen, who've been great support, and Andrea, great support in my role as interim general manager. And to the board, I know you guys have taken on a lot of extra work as well, and thank you for this opportunity to be here. With that, a couple of actual items of information. We do have some presentations. Pam mentioned NV5 is preparing communications outreach to each of the individual jurisdictions within the district's boundaries. Ross, Larkspur, San Anselmo, and Fairfax. We have some tentative dates. I'd like to let you know about those now, and then I'll follow up with an email. San Anselmo is tentatively scheduled for next Tuesday, July 24th. Fairfax is tentatively scheduled for August 1st. Larkspur is tentatively scheduled for September 5th. This is all, of course, with their acceptance of their council agenda preparation. They've got their own process. So Ross is still to be determined. I will be, like I said, following up via email with the board with some more details, but I plan to be there. Catherine may be there. The board, of course, is welcome, and we may also have somebody from NV5 who's actually preparing the presentation to those councils. And then lastly, just to let you know that I have been in contact with some staff over at Larkspur Public Works Department. We were kind of commiserating about the state of our corporation yards. Both of us acknowledge that, the state of the corporation yard for the district, and in fact, as it turns out, the state of the corporation yard for the city of Larkspur have some extraordinary similarities. And subsequently, Larkspur's city manager and planning director reached out to me and asked if I would like to join them for a very informal discussion with regards to the corporation yard over at Larkspur Landing. So I'm viewing this as an opportunity to see what kind of outreach and collaborative effort that we might have together. Only with regard, I want to be very specific to the functional operations in the world of corporation yards between the two agencies.
Felicia did raise this issue with me, and I agree with her to talk to Dan Schwartz, and I think it's, just to allay any concern you have, it's further collaboration between Ross Valley Sanitary District and the city of Larkspur. And so basically what they're saying is, can we come play in your yard? And the answer is sure. Let's talk about it. So at any rate, let's talk about it.
Since they're the zoning entity.
Where is their courtyard?
They're currently leasing space from Larkspur School District,
Right
and
across the
Larkspur
street.
School District is also very impacted with their space
First of all, let's just kick
restrictions.
them out.
Which school?
The school right here?
Right across the street.
Yes.
Hamill was.
Redwood?
Redwood.
Right behind.
Redwood.
That was my school.
Oh, no, it's Tiscap.
Oh,
Okay,
Tampa,
Tampa.
okay.
That way.
That way.
Yeah, that way.
Okay.
So I don't really know, what further information I can provide to the board, other than I will be reporting back to you.
Talk away.
Long-term, I'd rather have us go with them somewhere other than.
Right. I think you're right about that. Yeah, I think you're right about that.
That's,
That valuable property.
yes, let's
Yeah.
not lay down too much infrastructure, but I get it.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, let's move that to the beginning. My suggestion, again, the new board president, but those report outs, future agenda items should actually stay at the end of the meeting, in my opinion, because things come up during the meeting
Right.
themselves. But the report out should be at the beginning, so people aren't so
Understood.
And I would say,
I'm sorry?
that's,
One last comment is that we actually added the informational items as an agenda item for
Right.
recommendation. I just wanted to note that you didn't go through them as part of the agenda. You don't have to, but I didn't want to make sure you hadn't missed them. In case you wanted to go through the
we
information.
love our informational items, we always look at them, just a couple SSOs, don't worry. Oh, there's
Well,
a,
one was 1,000.
you know how I sometimes catch that didn't change the date? I think it says May, and it should be June. I know. With love. And then the other thing I would say is that it's both a true testament to all you and to Greg, that he's been gone for a month, and I don't feel like, everything has been falling apart, which is actually a sign of a really great leader, who is already gone, but also the team that he put together. So kudos.
I would
Thank you.
point out that as far as we know.
No, I think we know.
The meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.